I'd like to thank you for inviting me on the show. I really like to listen to my favorite podcast, Pop Culture Pasta.
Every once in a while, Cody, I get frustrated that there's a particular movie that doesn't get the due it deserves.
The Ghost and Mr. Chicken.
Also doesn't get the due it deserves, but that's not the one I'm thinking of. This one is a masterpiece. This one should be right up there with Citizen Kane, Gone with the Wind,
and Godfather.
Any other classic you could really name. This one's also, I believe, Tim Burton's best movie. And I'm not a big Tim Burton guy.
Okay, so now I'm intrigued.
That movie is Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
I was going to go with Beetlejuice.
Also pretty good, but Pee-wee's Big Adventure is an underrated masterpiece, and I will die fighting for it.
Someone needs to.
And if someone agrees with me, then I need you to speak up on the comment on this episode and say, we need to do a rewatch on that, a Be Kind Rewind on Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Because that movie, I mean, it's just genius. And I just need an excuse to watch it again.
Well, at least you're honest.
He's so weird. And like,
who are we talking about being weird?
Pee-wee Herman.
I was going to say we could say Pee-wee Herman. We could say Tim Curry. I mean, you are
Tim Curry.
Not Tim
Why
Curry.
Whoa! How do we throw Tim Curry under the bus?
Well, I mean,
Tim Burton.
Yeah. But Tim Curry is weird as well.
Paul Rubens.
Yeah, Paul Rubens. But yeah,
the genius of that movie is it was everyone thought that movie was for kids, and it was. Kids love that movie.
I loved it.
And then I watched it again as an adult, and I was like, this movie is brilliant because it's hilarious in an adult sense too.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't know why I was thinking about that. I just was.
I mean, Tim Burton, he is an interesting dude.
Like I said, not a big Tim Burton guy. The absurdity of Tim Burton's work works in that film though so well.
I was waiting for you to actually say the Batman, or not the Batman, but Batman.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. I was a comic book purist, and so I wasn't as big a fan of that as a lot of people were. But I do understand why people liked it, because Batman hadn't been done seriously on the screen like that.
Evidently, my friend Daniel DeVito, he wants Tim Burton to make another Batman movie.
I'll pass.
And he'll come back for it.
All respect to Danny DeVito. I'm going to pass on that. Just because it was the most serious Batman movie at the time doesn't mean it was serious enough for me. And then it's a case of be careful what you ask for, because now we can have Batman unless he's like, punching out teeth and it's gritty. It's so gritty.
Yeah.
Just the grittiest of the grit. Hi, this is Pop Culture Pastor. I'm Dave. That's Cody.
Who typically doesn't punch out teeth.
You would if you were Batman.
Who says I'm not?
And it's like, I love that the only way Zack Snyder could make him grittier was to give him guns.
I mean, if everyone else has them.
Batman, DC has a Batman problem, but that's a story for another day.
I feel we could do a whole episode over that.
Yeah, we might have to. Just go down the list of like, hey, Batman is what they have to hang their hat on. Also, it's a problem. It can be both.
Oh yeah,
because it's like a Batman movie's never not going to be successful. People want it.
It's kind of the Midas touch of the comic book realm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, good allegory. Yeah,
that's what I'm here for.
Very much so. Very much so. Hey. This is Pop Culture Pastor, the podcast. It's time for us to talk about some things. We're going to hit on a couple news items first before we get on to other things. This news came out this week, and I don't even know what to feel about this, Cody. Apparently, there's going to be more Lord of the Rings movies. February 23rd announcement by Warner Brothers, almost Westeros level brutal stuff here.
What?
Now the studio is going to make Lord of the Rings content. Warner Brothers is going to make Lord of the Rings movies.
What? Like they just canceled a whole bunch of movies they had already made or was 3/4 of the way through making. And
I'm telling you, like, I'm here for Lord of the Rings content, but Warner Brothers, dog. Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav declared in the company's earnings call that Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema made a deal with someone called the Embracer Group to make new Lord of the Rings movies. The reveal comes at a precarious time for Warner Brothers, with the studio admitting a $2.1 billion loss in quarter four. In a quarter of a year, Cody, they lost $2 billion.
I mean, literally, Elon Musk lost more than that in like 3 weeks.
Warner Brothers could have like not made movies and fed the homeless.
Easily. But of course, I could say that about any big chain.
Somewhere in my brain, Yakov Smirnoff was like, only in America.
Oh, Yakov.
Wow. So yeah, there's this weird announcement that there's going to be Lord of the Rings movies.
It's especially weird considering that like Amazon has their Lord of the Rings series.
Their $1 billion Lord of the Rings series.
And
how are they not going to step on each other's toes? What? You're dividing the fandom?
I don't like Warner Brothers' chances in this. If we're trying to divide the fandom.
It's as if Warner Brothers just said, you know what? It wasn't enough to ruin one fandom and to split them up. Let's go after some other big IP. Let's go after Tolkien's estate. The move will come 2 decades after director Peter Jackson's hugely popular Lord of the Rings saga, says The Hollywood Reporter. Now Jackson and his writing partners, Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens, are the precious talent Warner's hopes to get on board. So they don't even have Peter Jackson or anyone yet.
If you don't have Pete, you don't have me.
But they're dropping his name because of course they are.
I would.
There's this narrative that Amazon series just was a complete fumble. And I just don't get it.
No, it was fun. I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too.
And especially with like back lore that, I mean, some of it's there, some of it's not there. And so you can be creative. Go for it. Yeah.
So Embracer, which is this company, took over Middle Earth Enterprises from the Saul Zentz company last fall. Apparently Embracer is a Swedish video game company.
That's where I get all my video games from.
And so now they have the adaptation rights to the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit books, by the way, which is all that the Tolkien estate will give as canon. They said that's the only thing you can make stuff on. The Tolkien estate doesn't count the Silmarillion as canon, which is why, Tolkien nerds are all upset about the Amazon series. Because they literally had to make their own story that didn't delve into the notes of that were eventually made into the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
Anyways, this is weird. So there was a takeover in these companies. They got the IP. Warner Brothers had been going into production with an animated Lord of the Rings thing. But instead now this is all changed and they're going to put out movies. And now everyone's kind of wondering, well, what is this going to do to the Amazon thing? I mean, Amazon's got to be the maddest person in the room, right?
Yeah. Although I wouldn't be that mad if I was Amazon, just because it's like Warner Brothers hasn't been amazing with beloved IP here lately. If you go with DC and Space Jam, because I'm going to name it and claim it. So like I wouldn't be too worried unless they do get Peter Jackson on board. Because then you add a level of credibility, whether it's deserved or not, because a lot of people do have some grief or bias towards the Hobbit series, because it should not have been 3 movies, at most 2, and probably just 1.
Yeah, I'm like Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings, or Peter Jackson, The Hobbit, because there is a difference.
Yes.
Which Peter are we getting? Maybe if he's freed up to do a completely different story within that universe, that's something. But here's my problem. People don't like Rings of Power because they find it fan fiction-y, right? Because they're not using the notes of the Silmarillion, which the Tolkien estate won't let you do. So why are they going to like this? This is just the epitome of fan fiction, right?
Unless they give you side characters that weren't in the original Lord of the Rings movies, because there's beloved characters that did not make screen time.
Dude, you cannot make an entire movie out of Tom Bombadil.
They're doing it.
Someone's like, challenge accepted. We're making an entire trilogy out of Tom Bombadil. Oh, that would be awful.
It would be.
Okay, in other news, I have some worries about Shazam, Fury of the Gods.
So I got mixed feelings. So one thing I read had me like super optimistic, and then one thing I read had me like in despair. So,
well, first of all, Zachary Levi says something every other week or so that Twitter gets upset with, because Zachary Levi is a conservative dude. So literally anytime he says anything that's remotely worldviewish, he starts trending on Twitter. So you got Zach Levi. Then there's the whole portion of this where I don't believe that there's a chance that he's going to continue in the new DCU. I think they're just being quiet about it because they don't want to sell this movie down the river. They want it to make money. They want people to go see it. But I don't believe this movie's going to have anything to do with the new DCU.
So my thoughts are, if this movie tanks, that you can for sure kiss it and Aquaman goodbye. Like all the writings on the wall for Aquaman going the way of the dodo bird anyway. But
yeah. Well, let me tell you this little bit of news before I tell you what I think. Helen Mirren was on the Graham Norton show, which is apparently the big talk show in England.
It is. All the stars go on it.
She said, quote, "Don't ask me about the plot. It's too complicated." She plays the villain Hespera. Lucy Liu and I are angry goddesses wearing unbelievably heavy costumes. It was very hot and uncomfortable. And Lucy said at the end of first day's shooting, they're trying to kill us. I wanted to do it because I love the first Shazam. It was sweet and funny, but I'm not a big superhero type person. And she just fully admits that, like, I can't even explain to you what's going on in the movie because it's too complicated. That seems like a bad sign.
Not necessarily, because she hedges it with, I'm not a comic book person. And so if I was to bring on my mom onto this show, who, like, most actors and actresses, she can't tell you their name. Most comic book movies she thinks are ridiculous and stupid and dumb.
Okay, first of all, we need to get your mom on a pod now, because that sounds like all kinds of fun.
And then, but with certain movies, and I think Shazam was one of them, she was like, she really enjoyed it because it was so fun and lighthearted. And so I like, she wouldn't be able to tell me the story or subplot of what's happening between the big bad and Wonder Woman 84, especially. Like, she's not going to give me all that detail.
I don't know if I could.
That's too convoluted. And so, like, I'm chalking Helen's statement up to potentially this isn't her wheelhouse, and that she also doesn't want to spoil anything.
Yeah. This movie comes out March 17th. Like, there is so little hype, and that date surprised me. I was like, oh, crud, that's in 2 weeks.
So I've had this day on the calendar for a long time, but there wasn't much hype around the first Shazam either.
What happens if this movie bombs? Does it affect anything?
I think that they can then say, you know what, the fans spoke. We're going to move on and not have Shazam in the universe.
Do you think it profits? Do you think it's going to make a profit? What do you think's going to happen?
Again, the first one wasn't a huge success.
No.
But it also didn't cost a lot.
This one,
But this one has Lucy Liu and Helen Mirren in it, so it's going to cost a little bit more at least.
I mean, we're big fans of Zach.
And of the first Shazam.
Yeah.
Very underrated.
And I'm scared. I'm scared because I don't want my guy career to suffer. That's like, I don't even care about the DC, the movies and the continuity of this. I just care about our guy Zachary.
I think it will make back its money, and I think it'll be comparable to the first movie.
Okay.
In box office success, because evidently that's the only success that matters.
I'm gonna hold you to that, and I'm putting all the blame on you if it doesn't.
Thank you.
All right. That's the news that we wanted to talk about here on this episode. Now we need to do something very special that we're just going to take 5 minutes or so to do. We're going to preview the next Comics Conclave book we're going to read together.
That is a mouthful.
Yeah, Comics Conclave, which is kind of like our comic book reading club.
Yes.
And so we need to go talk to Scotty to see what book we're reading this month, because then we'll do it at the end of the month. So
via the Geek Phone.
Cody, to the Geek Phone! To the Geek Phone! The Geek Phone! All right, we're here on the Geek Phone with our friend Scotty.
The Geek Phone with Scotty.
Hey, guys.
What's up, Scotty? How you doing?
Not much.
We are here for this month's Comic Conclave intro, where we're the way this is going to work, I think, is we're going to tell everyone what we're reading this month, right? And then we're going to do the actual Comic Conclave at the end of the month. Is that how we're going to do this?
Yeah. Give everyone a chance to kind of go read the book, throw questions out through the Facebook and all the other social medias, and then we'll attack those questions in a month.
Okay. All right. So Comic Conclave, it's kind of like our comic book reading club, our comic book club.
It's basically like Oprah's Book of the Month Club.
And Scotty is like Oprah.
Exactly.
I am the Oprah.
He is our Oprah. He is our comic book geek of the round table in this instance, although he's not at the round table currently.
He's at a distance.
Yeah. You're here symbolically via the Geek Phone, Scotty. All right. So what is the book we will be reading this month?
This month is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Last Ronin. Okay,
I've heard of this. I've never read it.
I've heard of TMNT, as the kids say.
It is. Go for it.
This is not the ones you grew up with, right? The cartoons. This is like some serious stuff, right?
This is some serious stuff. It harkens a little bit back to the original Barrage comics, but at the same time not being that adult. The really nice thing with this title is that, say that your entry point to Ninja Turtles was the 80s cartoon, or say like the live action movies, you can pick this book up and read it, and it's still going to have the same emotional impact it's going to have on your diehard original Barrage fans.
Okay. Yeah. I am old enough to remember, Scotty, and I think maybe you are too. How old are you, Scotty?
I was a little bit after the cartoon came, but it was in syndication by the time it hit. So
okay, so I'm well older than you.
Yeah. So
I can actually remember when these comics by Eastman and Laird first came out in black and white.
Oh yeah.
And they were not like the cartoon. There was blood. No, not a bit. there was murder.
Yeah, Shredder's gone by the end of issue 1.
So this was when Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles first came out, it was serious business.
It was the hit of the boom of the Frank Miller coming out doing Ronin and doing his Daredevil run, and that kind of swing to those more adult books, that we grew up with, like Watchmen and those that, even so much so that the origin of Ninja Turtles is pretty much a parody of Daredevil. If you look closely in that original panel, there's a little Matt Murdock stand there when the TCRI canister goes into the sewers.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Snap.
Nice. All right. So what are we in store for here? Give us just like a broad, handful of sentences on what we're about to read this month.
What we're in store for is a story that leaps forward into the future. In this future, the Foot has pretty much won and taken over New York. New York is pretty much segregated off, kind of like Escape from New York style, but with regular people, not convicts.
Oh no. Post-apocalyptic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
The stinger is that there's only one turtle left, and the mystery into the book is that only one of them has lived through what has happened. And through this book, we travel through flashbacks of seeing how it came down to this last turtle.
Oh my goodness.
Around him, he's lost, and which turtle it is.
Okay, yeah, don't tell us which turtle.
No.
This I want to read this now. This sounds so amazing.
It's really good.
And kind of sad. We're kind of working through post-apocalyptic stuff right now with Last of Us.
We are, yeah, exactly.
So this is just going to be like post-apocalyptic with a little Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle flair.
Exactly. The really nice thing about this book was this concept was conceived by Eastman and Laird before they went their separate ways, and now they're back together. But it was originally envisioned to go with those original Mirage comics. So once they came back together for the Toys That Made Us episode, they got back together, and Eastman asked Laird, he goes, can I take this thing that we conceived together and make it into something that we do at IDW now? And he gave his blessing, and it's the first thing we've gotten in many years that the two of them have had their hand on, which is really nice together.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
So where can I find this comic?
Yeah, where do we get this, Scott?
This comic can be picked up through IDW. It can be picked up at any bookstore, Amazon.
Do we know if it's on Apple's iBook thing?
I think it may be on iBook. I know it's on however long it's last. I know it's on Comixology for 2.
Okay.
I do have mildly microwave prepubescent kung fu gophers. Is this similar?
A little less fun. Let's.
All right, man. Well, I'm excited about this book, and we're obviously going to talk to you at length about it at the end of the month. So I'm pretty stoked about that. And yeah, I'm excited I'm going to go find it and I'm going to read this.
It's happening.
It's all happening. Cody, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back with Comic Conclave at the end of the month. Make sure and go out and find, what's the title again, Scotty?
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Last Ronin.
Last Ronin. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Last Ronin. Go check it out. Go find it online. There's so many ways we can get to it now. Back in my day, you had to go to the comic shop and hope they had it left.
Exactly.
Cross your fingers.
All right. So go out and read it if you wanna be in the know on that. And we'll be back with Scotty at the end of the month. All right. Take care, Scotty. Thanks for coming on.
No problem, guys. Anytime.
All right, welcome back. We're back, just us in the studio, Cody and myself. And it's time for us to talk about what is going to be the main subject of this pod. Now, Cody, I'm going to be honest with the audience. I had no plans to talk about this movie. We are pastors.
I barely knew this movie existed. I'm not going to lie.
We are pastors, but this podcast is meant to kind of lean toward the pop culture side of it. And so therefore I know that like if we're doing that, this probably wouldn't be a topic of discussion. And so I just had no plans to talk about this movie whatsoever. I figured I'd probably see it.
So I have a friend who, like, I would say he's not practicing in his faith, but he really loves this style of Christian movie. Mm-hmm. Like he went out of his way to watch the Jeremy Camp one, the Mercy Me one, and even the Kurt Warner American Underdog one. And so I told him that he had to watch this one.
Yeah, and there's something going on in those movies you just listed that I definitely want to talk about. But we saw Jesus Revolution. And if you haven't seen it, I would invite you to go see it because as a movie, I just think it's pretty good.
It actually was.
It's just a good movie. And most Christian movies, we can't really say that.
So if you grew up with like the Left Behind Christian style movie, where like everything within the Christian entertainment arena was typically like post-apocalyptic or the apocalypse was happening.
Well, then it kind of translates into like Courageous. Those
the super cheesy ones.
Yeah, the ones where like any movie Kirk Cameron has been in, they're not populated with real humans. I've never met humans like the characters in those shows. And the reason they do that, the reason Christian studios do that is because these movies are just made to make Christians feel good about themselves, I think.
Which it's okay to feel good about yourself. But it's also not very helpful for anything else.
Well, nobody else wants to see that.
No.
Nobody else wants to see a movie that's playing to your sense of holiness. Right?
And also, let's be humble, people.
So when I know I'm going to a Christian movie, I get a little nervous. Now, this isn't the first time we have we will have reviewed a Christian movie, because we reviewed American Underdog, the Kurt Warner story. We talked a little bit about the Christian movie industry in general in that pod episode.
Yes.
And if you haven't listened to that and you're interested, go back and listen to it. All of our pods stay where they're at, so you can always go back and listen to an old pod. Go back and listen to that. This movie's actually done by the same people, by the Irwin brothers. John Irwin, Brent McCorkle directors, and Andrew Irwin is one of the producers. It's distributed by Lionsgate. Starring Kelsey Grammer is probably the biggest name in this movie.
Kelsey, my middle name should be Fraser Grammer.
Of course, well known for, probably best known for the character of Fraser Crane, who is in the TV show Frasier and Cheers.
Yes.
Jonathan Rumi, who plays Jesus on The Chosen, which is like, listen, I can't really undersell how big The Chosen is in the Christian world.
And it's well done, I would say. The episodes I've seen, like, it's intriguing. Now, some of the actors aren't quite up to, like, holy cow, this is Denzel Washington. But a lot of them are actually quality versus, like, again, if you watch the Left Behind movies or God's Not Dead, and you're like, oof.
Rabbit hole question. How come you haven't watched all of The Chosen?
So the only reason I've watched any of The Chosen was my church for Lent last year was doing a kind of a Bible study around episodes of The Chosen. Because, again, it's based off the Gospels. Uh-huh. And so they kind of piece things together. And then, like, there was an actual, like, you look up Bible verses, answer questions, and relate it to what was portrayed on the screen.
Yeah.
And so I watched probably 4 or 5 episodes that way. And it was good.
But can you put your finger on why you haven't been... why you haven't felt like you need to watch the rest of it?
So,
because I can, I'm just curious to what you would say.
My reasoning would be I'm not going out of my way for it. B, I don't have a lot of time, and C, I'm always anxious when a lot of churchy folks say, this is amazing. And oh my goodness, if everyone would just watch this, they would know the love of Jesus. And I'm like, well, you could just tell them about the love of Jesus or show it to them. That'd be nice.
We're literally doing a pod where we're going to say how amazing Jesus Revolution is, and everybody should go see it.
We are.
The irony is so thick.
It is. But I mean, I'm always hesitant just because I can go back to random movies, random series of things, and like even the superhero Bible Man. Yeah, that was a thing. And be like, it's cringy.
Yeah, was that Willie Ames? That
was Willie Ames. Where I will say The Chosen isn't cringy, but like some people within my congregation were like, oh, the way they portrayed Matthew. Now I see, because for lack of better words, they kind of portray Matthew like he's on the autism spectrum. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they take some imaginative leaps with the characters.
But then, like, people came to me and said, "Oh, I can see that by the way Matthew writes," and I'm like,
"Can you?
That you are a deeper theological theologian person than myself, and also must be an ASD expert, because I'm not seeing that." But again,
you're actually nailing. It took me a while to figure it out because I watched the first couple episodes and I could do the checklist. I could say, well, this is well done. Mm-hmm. It's the production level's great. The story is interesting.
And you don't meet Jesus initially. It takes a while to
and
get
I
Jesus.
love the Gospels. Mm-hmm. And I could not figure out why I didn't feel like I wanted to keep watching this show. Jonathan Rumi, by the way, is great as Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
He's a wonderful actor, I think. And in what is, one of the all-time thankless roles. Mm-hmm. Anyone that's ever played Jesus would probably tell you, like, there's no way you're going to satisfy everybody, right?
No.
But all of those things I check off, but yet I was still bothered that I just didn't want to watch the show. Well, I finally figured it out.
Oh.
And I know this has nothing to do with what we're talking about in the main topic, but this is important. I like to read my Bible and use my own imagination. Let the Spirit lead my imagination to where it needs to go. Mm-hmm. When I think about the people around Jesus, and something about watching someone else's imagination's version of the story, I'm not into it.
Yeah. Like, so there's creative liberties with Peter, especially in the episodes I've watched. And I'm like, I don't know if I need Peter to be the absolute worst human being walking around right now.
I mean, it's almost like I want to leave room for the Spirit to take me where it takes me when I'm reading my Bible, not think about this show every time I'm reading my Bible. And I've witnessed this, by the way. Mm-hmm. People talk about some of the things like Matthew's alleged autism, like it's
gospel truth.
Yes, like it's actually in the Bible, and you're just like, you want to be like, well, be careful because it's artistic vision.
Yes, and
which is fine. Like
for all I know, Matthew might have been on the autism spectrum disorder. That's great. Yeah. That is great. But like when it becomes something that you espouse to other people, then like that you can't back that up. Yeah. It then is like, oh, well, what else are you lying about?
And I've heard people in my church talk about this show like it's the Bible. And it just makes me a little nervous. But that's just an aside. I bring it up to say that Jonathan Rumi's great in it from what I've seen. And he's great in this movie, Jesus Revolution. He is great. And side note, I reached out to his people to try to get him on the pod and the radio. They did not return my email.
Not yet.
Not yet. Right.
That's the optimistic view.
Man, you guys, I wrote this really sweet email. Like it could have been just the standard email you write to someone's agents. It's just like, hey, we'd like to have him on the show. This is how long we would like it to be. This is how many people roughly listen to our. I didn't. I just wrote this sweet long email about how much I loved the movie, how great I think he is in it, and how thankful I was for him. Like, I wrote this really nice email because I thought maybe they would respond to that better. They did not.
Did you say we'll send a bag of peanut butter M&Ms?
Is that a thing?
That's a thing I would have attempted.
Why peanut butter M&Ms? That seems so random.
Because peanut butter M&Ms are the best M&Ms, and it's like heaven almost.
I don't know how we got here, but here we are. Anyways, Jesus Revolution. So those are the two big guys in this movie.
Joel Courtney's somebody. And you might say, Cody, who's Joel Courtney?
Who is Joel Courtney?
I will tell you who Joel Courtney is. After my phone quit spazzing out. The Kissing Booth movies. 1, 2, and 3 he's in.
Okay, I haven't seen any of those.
And he's in the hit movie from the director I despise with the passion of 1,000 suns, J.J. Abrams.
Shocking J.J. Abrams slander.
I apologize, JJ, because this movie was really good until the end. It's about a killer hotel. No, it's not, but it's Super 8. He was in Super 8.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Was he one of the kids?
He was. He grew up.
Whoa, okay. Yeah, no idea. So Joel Courtney plays Greg Laurie.
Yes.
Who now we know is like the head of a big mega church, Harvest.
And then Kimberly Williams Paisley is Brad Paisley's wife and also was on According to Jim.
Brad Paisley is Kimberly Williams' husband, and I would like you to refer to it in that manner because she's way bigger.
Is she, though? Because he has the nationwide commercials.
I'm not a big country fan, so yeah.
With Peyton Manning.
I would be remiss if I didn't also mention that Shaun Weiss was in this movie. You might be like,
yes.
Who's Shaun Weiss? He was Goldberg in the Mighty Ducks movies.
Yes.
And that's sort of a big deal because that dude was on like drugs and homeless for a long time.
He was.
And he's come back and he's gave his life to Jesus and turned himself around.
So I was really excited to see him. And since I was watching it by myself, I didn't have anyone to say, is that who I think it is?
I recognized it immediately. I was like, it's Goldberg. Not the wrestler. Not the wrestler. But yeah, okay. So if you're not familiar with just a broad take on the movie, Jesus Revolution takes place in the 70s. This movie's really centered you're seeing this through the eyes of a young Greg Laurie.
Yes.
So he's a teenager. He's got all kinds of issues. He's doesn't have a dad. Dad's not in the picture. Mom is addicted to alcohol. So he's got that kind of life. He's kind of drifting and lost. And this story is all seen through his eyes, how he comes into contact with these people. Kelsey Grammer plays Pastor Chuck Smith. Jonathan Rumi plays a guy named Lonnie Frisbee, and this cast of characters in the real world start this, for lack of a better word, a revival. This huge thing that kind of overtakes the nation. That is, when I first came to the church, because I didn't grow up in church, Cody.
Yes.
There are old timers in my church that still talk about this.
So
the Jesus movement. I'd heard all about it. That was one of the first things I remember hearing.
That's interesting. So
we're Pentecostal.
I was going to say there's a huge divide because you could tell me a whole bunch about Greg Laurie and I'll be like, who?
Yeah, I had no idea who he was.
So and this movement, although so I'm going to do a little spoiler that at the end of the film, they said it was like the biggest Christian movement in the nation's history. And as someone that went through church history and American church history at that as well, I will say maybe in numbers, but not percentage. So I'm going to hinder the hype at the end of the movie a little bit, just because there are several movements in the 1800s that really create the Bible Belt, essentially.
Yeah.
And so the population's not that big at that time in the United States. Now it is big. And so if you have a huge group in California and people coming from all over, okay, it makes sense. But I'm not going to go out on the limb that they go out on as a church history studier.
Yeah. So in the macro, that's what this movie's about. It's about the Jesus Revolution, this movement, the Jesus movement. But in the micro, it's really about Greg Laurie, this teenager who's trying to get his life on track and get himself together.
Oh, yeah.
And everything is told through kind of the lens of his story. He is the focal point. And in that, I think this is really, really smart, Cody, to see this movement from someone who is there, but from their eyes is really important. Because what's the trap that all Christian movies fall into? They're overly holy. They play to this fake version of humanity that kind of plays to Christians' self-righteousness.
Yeah. No one can do any wrong.
Right.
I will say that there was a point in the movie, and I don't even know what the runtime of this movie is, but there's a point that if it had stopped where I thought it was going to stop, it was going to be a kind of a shorter film. I think that I would have left thinking this was a story about a completely different character. But the longer it went on, it became clear of, oh, these are the influential people around Greg's life.
Yeah.
And that this is how Greg is viewing all this going down around him.
Yeah. Okay. So it's essentially that's it. It's about this movement and it's about Greg Laurie. And that's what the movie's about. So let's get into the good stuff. What did we love about this?
His name in the movie is Lonnie Frisbee.
Oh man.
But his name is Jonathan Rumi.
Jonathan Rumi. Like, will this translate into regular movies, like non-Christian entertainment? Because he's good, right?
Oh yeah. So I'm trying to think within like Christian films period, is there someone comparable?
I don't know, man.
So
I don't think there is. I mean, he's it right now. I think the only thing left for him to do is to play a part where he doesn't look like Jesus.
Yeah.
Because maybe it's just that he still looks kind of like Jesus in this movie because he's a hippie.
So many hippies.
Yeah, he's wonderful in this movie.
Kelsey Grammer.
Well, hold on. Let's not move on too quick.
Well, I was going, okay.
Because were you just going to say the whole cast?
No. I wasn't going to say the whole cast. And I wasn't going to say Kelsey Grammer's performance in general. I was going to say a very specific part of his performance.
Go ahead.
That he portrayed old, uptight, white pastor perfectly. Like at the beginning.
Yeah.
And they nail a whole bunch of stuff, but back to what you were going to say.
So Jonathan Rumi as Lonnie Frisbee. I didn't know much of anything about Lonnie Frisbee going into this movie. Now, in the week since I've seen this movie, I have done a lot of studying, reading, watching YouTube videos, all these things, because there's been a discussion around the movie that we'll get to in a little bit that I want to get into. But I want to say there's a point where this movie became a decent movie where I turned to my wife and said, this movie's brilliant. And there's a scene in the movie where up until a point, the movement explodes. Everybody's happy. Everybody's life's on the right track. Other than Kelsey Grammer's Pastor Chuck, who has to work through some what would we call it? Some prejudices. He has to work through some of those things. Other than that, we haven't really seen much of any brokenness other than Greg and the teenage stuff, the drugs.
Yeah, because it starts with them being at like a Janis Joplin concert. So that tells you.
And I was a little worried about 45 minutes into this movie. I was a little worried that what we were going to see was the deification of Lonnie Frisbee, who's a character, again, that I'm going in fresh. I didn't know anything about him. Mm-hmm. And then it turns. It starts to go to his head. His flaws start rearing their head. There's friction. And I turned to my wife at that moment, especially in the tent, when Chuck kind of talks to him and tells him, "Hey, you're losing it here a little bit." And I turned to my
chastised.
Yeah. And I turned to my wife and I said, "This movie's brilliant." I was like, this is the most intelligent Christian film. This is the first Christian film I've ever seen that got something right. And that is, don't make your characters not human. Mm-hmm. If it's a real testimony, then they're really broken. They have real brokenness. And so this movie does not shy away from that. Although they don't get into all of Lonnie's problems.
Because it's not a Lonnie movie.
Because it's not about Lonnie. Yes. And we'll get to that later because there's a whole discussion. But I just want to say that Jonathan Rumi is fantastic.
Jonathan Rumi's great. I think that they do a good job of. So I want to be careful how I say this. But they do a good job with some church culture. In the fact of like, if you have a board, if you have a committee that oversees the church, and you have the grumpy old guys, once you start having people that act a certain way, look a certain way, speak a certain way, whatever, they start getting upset. And then the beloved church carpet. Oh my goodness. In this movie, they had new shag carpet.
Yeah.
And those hippies were going to ruin it with their dirty feet.
Like, listen, the hippies in this movie are the crowd that the church can't get on board with. Chuck's church can't get on board with. And before you think, oh, that crazy church, know that we have crowds that are the hippies in our church now. The LGBT come to mind. They're the hippies of our generation. And that's all I could think about when I was watching this movie, is that, like, at some point we're going to have to fight the churchy system and be willing to accept anybody walking through our doors without judgment.
So it goes into the whole, like, we don't have to be the gatekeepers of the faith.
Yeah.
That Jesus is the gate. And so, like, I mean, as a pastor, I've seen it 1,000 times that people that you think, oh, they would be great here, they don't last long sometimes. And then
they get gatekeeped.
Well, no, not necessarily that. I mean, like, even if they weren't being gatekeeped, that, like, people that on the outside, I would think, oh, they're going to fit in great, and they don't, and they just leave. And then people that, like, everyone else has concerns about, and maybe even I have a little bit of concern about, turn out to, like, be model citizens and, like, heroes of that particular church. And it's amazing to see just how you don't judge a book by its cover, because only God is the real judge here. And great things can happen when we stop gatekeeping.
Yeah. Yeah. And that leads to what I thought was good about the movie. You notice we're not going to get too specific about the plot. We didn't give you a spoiler warning because, honestly, I don't know that I want to tell you a lot about this movie if you haven't seen it. Because I want you to go see it. And because it's not super unpredictable.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's not like that. But there are parts of it that are unpredictable. That's going to lead me into what I thought was great about this movie, is that it works on multiple levels. So number one, it's just a good movie. There's good character work done. It's interesting. You want to know. You want to go on the ride with these characters. You want to see what happens. So just on a movie level, it's good, which very few Christian movies can actually say that. American Underdog was one.
I was going to say, movies by this particular group tend to be a lot better than the others that come to my mind initially.
The Erwin brothers have seemed to have figured something out. They seem to have diagnosed that Christian movies suffer from the wrong emphasis, which is most Christian studios make movies where they can make money off of Christians by giving them this fake version of themselves. These characters that are over holy, that don't resemble anyone I've ever seen in a church. And they are, those movies are all full of them, and that's why God's Not Dead. Like, it's just insanely ridiculous.
Ridiculous plots, like, oh, the professor of this philosophy class is going to stop the whole class and debate you.
Like, let's be clear,
they're not caring one iota.
They're not even caricatures, because caricatures take something real and blow it out of proportion. The characters in most Christian movies aren't even real. They're like completely fictionalized, fake. They're not human.
Now, I don't want the listeners that actually do enjoy those films to think, oh, I hate them and everything about them. But like, from a movie standpoint, it's not super enjoyable for me. I get that it does help some people out and that some people do enjoy it and maybe some people do need it, but it misses kind of that gospel emphasis, because the thing about the gospel, especially with the disciples, you see over and over again their flaws, their imperfections. They're literally right next to Jesus, hearing him say something one moment and then doing the complete opposite the next. And like, oh, we are all broken. That's why Jesus came, because the perfectly healthy don't need a doctor. It's the sick that need a doctor, and Jesus is the good doctor.
So the Irwin brothers have figured something out here. They figured out that it's testimonials.
Yes.
That are what carries people, what people find interesting. Also, what the Bible says is powerful.
Yes.
The word of our testimony. So, like, they have figured something out, and they make these movies that are explicitly testimonial. In this case, Greg Laurie. We're in this with that character, this teenager who's just in the middle of all this. And that brings me to the second way this movie works. So the first level this movie works on is just as a movie. It's interesting. The second level this movie works on is as an evangelical tool. This so works for getting people outside of the faith to be into something, and as an evangelical tool, because you can see through the testimonial style of this, by putting someone's story on the screen, people can see exactly what Jesus has done in their life.
Yeah.
In a real life situation, flaws and all. Greg Laurie is a teenager who's on drugs. He almost kills himself a few times because of dumb behavior, like, people driving under the influence. There's people overdosing in this film.
He's raised by a single mom
who's, just drunk all the time. Like, look, you get a real humanity in this. And that's so this movie works on another level, which is evangelical level.
Yeah, where I would say most of the other Christian films. So usually there's two things that if you're doing a church mission type deal, you either edify the body, which is you build up and you do the positive things about what the faith does for the church, just for the church, not for people outside the walls, but it's for the inside. But evangelism is outside. Yeah. And so the movies that aren't from this group tend to work on, I guess, consuming on those that are inside the four walls. These can work inside and outside.
Yeah. So, I mean, the mistake Christian movies have made in the past is we lie to ourselves and say movies like Fireproof and Courageous are great movies to take your unsaved friends to. And it's like, listen, they can't relate to the people they see on the screen in those movies because they're not real humans.
So, as a youth pastor, probably 5 years after Fireproof comes out, Fireproof. I'm watching it with my youth group because the church I'm at, and the youth start making fun of the lines in it. Because I mean, they're usually not the best written either, and they don't have quite the acting chops. And so it almost became a mystery science theater type thing. And I mean, it was good for the time it was in, but this is a different level.
Yeah. So the movie works on a third level. And this is where the greatness comes, Cody. Because not only is it a movie that's just good, that'll hold an average viewer's attention, not only is this movie a great evangelical tool for like people outside the church to watch, be into this story, and to see a testimony, it also is a movie for the church. It's a commentary for the church because, as we stated, you get the churchy behavior in the movie. The way that this church reacts to the hippies is the way we react to LGBT and groups of people like that in the now.
Russians.
It's literally the way we're treated. The way they treated the hippies is the way we kind of do it now. And so there's a commentary running in this movie that kind of through Pastor Chuck Smith that at some point we got to let down these walls we put up in order to somehow maintain that we're better than people and just say, no, we need to get them all in here. Let Jesus be the one who gatekeeps.
And I'll say that it's what we're facing now isn't different than what they were facing then.
No, not at all.
Isn't different what was being faced in like the 1850s.
Nope.
And not different than what was being faced as Jesus was walking around and having Pharisees confront him left and right.
This is going to be a shock to those people that think we're so much more advanced than people that lived hundreds of years ago. The times change, but humans do not.
Yeah, our attitudes really remain fairly consistent.
Yeah. And so I loved that this part of the movie that had something to say for all the crowds that could come watch this movie. And I think it's maybe the only Christian movie I've ever seen, a movie by a Christian studio that manages to pull this off and do it well, make a good movie doing it. Was there anything we didn't like about the movie? Any bad stuff?
I mean, there's a couple moments that I kind of get cringy. Although if that's how the people at that moment in time actually behaved, then good for them showing it. But when Kelsey Grammer is chastising Jesus from The Chosen, like what's going on in those scenes feel cringy to me. But I mean, if that's what happened, then show it, because sometimes we get in the way of ourselves and of the faith, and we get full of ourselves, and cringy things happen. And with me also not being like, I'm not I will preface this, I'm not anti-Pentecostal. I just am not in a Pentecostal environment.
Yeah.
And so like some of the things felt Benny Hinnish. Mm-hmm. That's how I'm going to word it. Yeah. Like where you start to question this charismatic movement. Is it really happening or not? But then the faith or the movie does a good job of showing like this was a moment of conflict for all parties, and a moment that ended up being kind of a breaking point that forever alters the course of the three individuals that it's heavily focusing on.
Yeah. I realize there's going to be some embellishment in it because it's a movie and you're trying, you want to make something that catches people. So I understand that there's going to be some embellishment here and there. The tent stuff was kind of cringy for me, and I'm Pentecostal.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at. Like the tent stuff, that it felt like Brother Love's Traveling Salvation Show by Neil Diamond.
Some of it was a little cringy, and I can admit that. Mostly what I want to talk about in the bad stuff is the commentary around the movie from Christians.
Oh, okay. So, I'm intrigued now.
So here's the thing. I saw this on Wednesday.
I saw it on Saturday.
And I saw it, the sneak peek before a lot of people saw it. And I loved it. And I went home thinking, man, what a great movie. And then I watched as the weekend progressed. And the conversation around this movie began to grow. And here's what amazes me, Cody. And it goes back to a little bit. We talked about the He Gets Us ads at the Super Bowl on the radio recently. And we talked about how like the whole point of those ads was to, hey, maybe we should be less oppositional. That was like the whole point of the ads. And everyone got oppositional around the ads. And they do the same thing with these movies. And it just strikes me that it's Christians doing it. The one group of people who Jesus spends a lot of effort trying to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't be so oppositional. You don't have enemies, right? All of a sudden, people get oppositional. And this is the crazy part. I watched conservative Christians bash this movie because, well, Lonnie Frisbee did some bad stuff. He did some bad stuff and we shouldn't glorify him.
Hey, I don't think the movie like really glorified him. It made him an interesting character.
Yeah.
That it did a good job of that. But like, if you didn't, especially when he leaves the home that they had basically turned into like a hippie commune.
Yeah.
If you didn't think that oh, this guy's very selfish and he gets in the way of himself. And like, if you didn't have those thoughts, then I don't know what movie you were watching.
Yeah. The conversation almost centers solely around this character, the real guy, Lonnie Frisbee. So, but it wasn't just conservatives, because then liberals started. So this is a tweet from Tyler Huckabee.
The Huck.
Listen, I used to really like Tyler Huckabee. I'm not saying I love him as a Christian brother, right? I don't dislike him, but I used to really love him because Tyler, as a writer for Relevant, really was their pop culture guy. So I felt like this, kindred spirit type of thing with him. That's how he kind of got his start. Over the Trump years and the pandemic years, he really got political and super, super progressive. This was his tweet in reaction to this movie. Hard not to be a little heartbroken about how special and important a movie that told the real story of Lonnie Frisbee could be. Now, here's where he's going with this. I heard liberals complaining that this was a chance to champion someone who championed LGBT and was also a Christian. Now, first of all, that's completely untrue. So I read what Lonnie Frisbee wrote on his deathbed. Okay. I went and sought this stuff out. I saw an interview with people who talked to him on his deathbed. So listen, here's the truth. Lonnie Frisbee, after he leaves the movie, the part in the movie where we last see him, his marriage falls apart.
Yeah.
He falls away from the faith. He gets heavy into drugs. He dabbles in homosexuality. Okay. All of that is stuff that he admitted that he's talked about. Then he comes back to the faith. He starts Vineyard Church, but then sort of the rest of his life has these back and forth motions where he's struggling, right? He's struggling with himself. He's struggling with drugs. He's struggling with his lust. And on his deathbed, he dies of AIDS. Mm-hmm. And on his deathbed, he's real open. He writes this stuff that's real autobiographical, and he talks about all this. And he at no point makes concessions for his behavior other than to say that they were wrong. Okay. Now look, I'm not trying to give commentary on whatever it is you think's right or wrong or behaviors. I'm not here to say it's right or wrong. I'm saying we're all broken, and trying to make Lonnie Frisbee into someone he wasn't so you can further some political movement is what both conservatives and liberals are trying to do with this movie. And in the end, the real sin of it, the real crime is you're just being oppositional.
So,
and the point of this movie, Cody, I'm sorry, let me get this last part out. The point of this movie is the same as the He Gets Us commercials. Hey, what would happen if we stopped being so oppositional? What would happen if we let people we were uncomfortable with in the church and actually loved them and let them be? And we can't even get this right watching the movie, as I've watched this commentary flow from this, and it's the most disappointing, heartbreaking, spirit-crushing thing to watch the church do this.
It's not shocking.
No, it's not. I mean, it's not. I keep hoping. I keep hoping, like, man.
You're an optimist.
I am.
So, I mean, if I was to alter anything, maybe, because at the end they give like where each of these people are or what's happened to them. Like maybe you say, oh, Lonnie died of this in 1993 after starting Vineyard Church. Because I didn't know he started Vineyard Church.
Yeah, I didn't either.
In which, like, the music out of Vineyard Church back in the day was like the Cat's Pajamas.
I only knew a John Wimber. So I didn't, like that's as far back as my knowledge went with Vineyard.
But I will say that, again, it's not a Lonnie movie. Literally, it's focused on this movement that happened at this specific time in the early 70s and how it launches Pastor Greg Laurie and his ministry and his relationship with his wife and those sorts of things. But like, it's not supposed to necessarily specifically be about just one particular individual, especially Lonnie, because Lonnie, you lose Lonnie, like
Yeah.
2/3 of the way through the movie.
Like in both these camps of people, this has been their criticism of the movie, is that they wanted the real Lonnie story out there. And like, listen, if I'm being honest, yeah, the movie makers handle him with kid gloves. It's subtle. They don't get deep into it, but you understand he's got problems.
Oh, yeah. When you first meet him, he's talking to Kelsey Grammer's daughter about like, oh, I did this. And you know what? Literally, I did all these things because I was looking. And I didn't know I was looking for God, but that's what I was looking for.
There's a quote, and it might have been by Spurgeon. I can't remember who said this, but he said, "The man knocking on the door of a brothel is looking for God." And Lonnie says something very similar to that in the movie.
Yeah.
That when we fall into our sin, we're looking for this fulfillment, this comfort that God is meant to give us. And so these two camps who wanted, like, you got one side who's saying, no, go full into the story and demonize Lonnie. And then you got the other side saying, go full into the story and glorify Lonnie. And both of them miss the point. The point that Lonnie is very human, he's very broken, and we don't have to glorify him or demonize him.
Yeah.
He's just broken, like you, like me. And that's the point.
Like Peter, like Paul, like all the popes that have ever existed. Anyone you want to list and name off.
And for us to continually trip over this and not get it is just so frustrating. But we'll move on because we got to.
Yeah.
We don't really have to go over like the greatest story ever told award. Like, no, it's a Christian movie. It's got all this.
It has a lot of biblical themes. And like, if I was just to highlight one briefly, and technically it's two, but it's the same parable, but used for different things. Jesus talks about be weary of the leaven or yeast of the Pharisees. That's the message for the church.
Well, you're going to get me preaching.
And then Jesus gives a parable about a woman who adds yeast to the dough and it permeates the whole dough. And that's what the kingdom of God's like. It will permeate everything. And that is this movement that the hippies, because that's what they are at this point, is hippies. The hippies come in because they're all searching, they're all seeking. And when they actually see what the truth, what the reality is that they've been searching for this whole time, it transforms them. It makes them something completely different. So they went from unleavened to being leavened bread.
Yeah, it's great. That's great. Yeah. And I'm not going to add anything to that because I'll get real preachy.
Yeah.
And it'll be on in here.
And
I'll be like DJ.
People will be like, Cody, I don't even know what this bread talks about. That's okay.
Who's the winner of the movie? Who wins this movie?
So if I'm going with someone outside of Jesus from The Chosen, I'm probably going to go with Anna Grace Barlow.
Yeah, I've never seen her before, but she steals a lot of scenes.
She does. And like when she decides, oh, this movement is not what I'm about in the early part of the film. I'm not going to tell you which movement she's in. Because of something that happens to her sister. Like she literally transformed my emotions and I'm like, I'm with you, sister. Get away from them.
Yeah, I don't know any of them. None of the movies she's been in I recognize, but she was in the Goldbergs. That's on television show, the Goldbergs.
Not Bill.
And the Scream TV series.
Ooh.
Yeah. I would say, honestly, I would love to say that the winner of the movie is
Sean Weiss.
Well, yes, he's a winner because where he was at in life to where he is now, he wins it all. I would like to say that the Irwin brothers are the winners.
Yeah.
Because I would like to see them get the credit for what they're doing, but I don't think they will. I don't think people will see it well enough to see it. So, the obvious choice to me is Jonathan Rumi. And I'll just say it because he's fantastic. He's so good. in the role of Lonnie Frisbee. I think the reason people are focusing on him is because of the history, but also because it's hard to take your eyes off him because Jonathan Roumie is magnetic.
He's magnetic. The character, the person of Mr. Frisbee, Lonnie Frisbee, that he was charismatic. And so like Jonathan Roumie really captures that charisma and draws you in to the point that I'm like, Kelsey Grammer, what are you even doing?
Yeah. Kelsey Grammer is just like a side player. That's how good Roumie is in this.
Yeah.
And Kelsey's good in the movie.
Yeah.
He's warm. He's likable. He's great.
He has faced problems that I have faced in my pastordom.
But even then, I don't think Jonathan Roumie is the overall winner of the movie. I think the winner of the movie is the Christian movie industry. And I think it's because like this movie made it's 15 million opening weekend. It was projected to make 7.
Third in the box office.
It blew people away, beat Magic Mike sequel.
Huzzah.
Beat all these other movies.
Cocaine Bear was too strong.
Yeah. But like, listen, this is a big deal. The budget for it was 15 million. It already made its money back. So everything past here is profit. And it's going to make a ton of money because the rewatchability of this movie for Christians is off the charts.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to keep going to see this movie. And so it's going to make a lot more money. And so I believe the Christian movie industry actually is going to be the winner of this because what happens when something makes a lot of money, Cody?
They want to recapture that success.
People are going to copy it. And frankly, I'm for that for the Christian movie industry. Move away from what you used to do and start making testimonies.
And since this actually did so well and it placed third in the box office, that got it more recognition.
Yeah.
Because I've seen articles on Yahoo like surprising third place finisher in this weekend's box office with a strong $15 million opening. And
I've seen major outlets that are neutral, big news outlets that aren't religious in any way call it a miracle. They call it a miracle, Cody.
Like,
I think USA Today said that.
If Ant-Man has another like huge fall in its revenue grossing,
oh boy,
it could take or surpass Ant-Man.
I mean, yeah. What if Jesus Revolution moves past Ant-Man in its third week? Ant-Man in its third week, Jesus Revolution in its second week. If it makes more money than Ant-Man this weekend, oh my goodness. We'll have to do a whole nother pod on Marvel is at its all-time low.
/ it is a miracle.
Yeah, right? Is there a loser of the movie? The Go Get 'Em Next Time award.
Kimberly Williams Paisley. Like, so if I was to complain about any part of the movie, I wanted more of the struggling single mom dynamic and also like the revelation that, oh, your dad didn't leave.
Yeah.
We left him.
That moment doesn't pay off very well because, the backstory for Greg's a little thin and they kind of waste a really good actress in Kimberly Williams Paisley because we just don't I feel like there was more of that on the cutting room floor.
Oh, yeah. And so this movie lasts over 2 hours. And so I think that some of Pastor Greg's backstory gets lost to the cutting room floor. But then you also have to decide, is this a Pastor Greg movie or is this a movie that it's about the movement that helps launch Greg into becoming a pastor?
Yeah.
It helps him find his calling and his purpose in life.
It's definitely about the movement through Greg's eyes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
Greg's the narrator.
you lose out on a phenomenal actress. She was literally my favorite part of According to Jim. Sorry, James Belushi.
Oh, yeah. I got a lot of thoughts on Jim Belushi, but okay. Let's rate the movie. I guess there's nothing left to do but rate the movie.
So on a Christian movie scale,
It's hilarious that you're going to do this because I did not talk to you about this, but I'm going to do the same thing.
it's a 10 out of 10. and maybe even higher. On just a general movie scale, that's a solid 7.
Oh my gosh! I think this might be a pop culture pastor first. We're almost in unison. Because my thought coming in here was, yes, I have to give it 2 ratings. Because just on a general movie, I'd give it a 7. It's good.
I'll rewatch it sometime.
It's good. Yeah, I'll rewatch it too. But it feels fair to give it a movie on a Christian movie industry level, which is a 9.5 for me. Only because I feel weird giving anything a 10.
Yeah, like
it wasn't perfect.
I wanted to go lower than 10, but like everything I have seen, which is a lot, like nothing really held a candle to it.
Oh, man. One thing is for sure. The Irwin brothers, they got it figured out. Maybe I should reach out to their people. I'd love to have them on.
Yes.
We wanted to, I wanted to talk to them after the Kurt Warner movie.
I would also be okay if we could get Kelsey Grammer.
Yes, that too. That would work.
The struggling thespian known as Kelsey Grammer.
Okay. Have you guys seen Jesus Revolution? What did you guys think? We know we have a lot of Christian listeners. We have a lot of regular listeners, people who may not be particularly religious. What did you guys think if you've seen it? What do you guys think of the commercials if you haven't seen it? Do you want to see it?
And yeah, comment.
Yeah, we'd love to hear your comments, your thoughts on the movie when we post this to social media and the community group. If you follow Pop Culture Pastor on Facebook, know that we also have a community group where we get more in depth and try to have conversations with you, the listener. So go ahead and comment on this. What'd you think? In the meantime, make sure and share our podcast. It helps us do more things. We got 3 drops during the week now, and we're getting ready to go to Kansas City playing at Comic-Con.
We are.
In a week from when this pod drops, right? 2 weeks. 2 weeks from when this pod drops.
St. Patty's Day.
Yeah. So, man, come out and see us if you're going to be in Kansas City. If you're going to Planet Comic-Con, we'd love to talk to you and see you face to face and shake your hand.
Don't pinch me if I'm not wearing green.
Yeah, don't do that.
That's not nice.
That's rude. All right. We love you guys. We'll see you next time.